Today we'll be discussing queening with check. In the previous videos where both sides had a rook pawn, the first person to queen is able to control the queening square of the other player. But that would prevent them from queening. And here it's the same situation where if you queen first and the other player is in check, then they're not allowed to queen because they have to move their king and not their pawn. So what happens with that is we get a free move and we're able to close in. And as long as it's not a rook or bishop pawn, then there shouldn't be any problem. Like, for example, here there's a knight pawn that black is threatening to promote. But by playing c5, which is okay because after c5, then black won't be in the square of the pawn. Black's king. So we play c5. And that threatens to play b6, while c takes b6, followed by b7 and b8, queening. And the best thing about it is that we're queening with check. And that's why you can't just play g4 because after c takes b6, g3, b7, g2 queens, and there's check. He has to move the king, and we're able to close in on this pawn. Or we could also just sacrifice our queen and then promote this pawn, whichever one. I like doing the second one just to humiliate my opponent, but it's not necessary. So he will play b5, trying to be sneaky. But the problem with that is that we queen first, c6, g4, c7, g3, queens, g2, and now we could just play queen to h8, and then king g1, king to d2, king f2, and then queen f6, king to g1, and you see we just close in because it's a knight pawn. There's no stalemate here. King to g1, king to e2, king to h2, queen to h4 check, king to g1, and after king to f3, this is a checkmate. King to f1, king to f2. So he cannot play simply b5. So what he's going to do is he's going to take the pawn. So he takes the pawn, but now we have a straightforward path to promotion. So b5, g4, b6, g3, b7, g2. And we didn't take the pawn because then we would be queen on this square and there's no check. But now we queen with check and the game is over soon. And here's a similar example where both sides are threatening to promote their pawns. By following this b5, we're able to queen with check. So he has to stop that. He cannot play h4. He has to play king e5. But then after b6, king d6, you see how he's still on the same diagonal? So we're able to queen with check. Now we can't just play b7 because of king c7. So we have to play king b5. There's a barrier, so he can't just get a blockade straight away. He has to play king d7 for that. But then after king a6, king c8, king a7, the pawn's definitely going to queen with check. So after b5, it's unfortunate for the black king to be here. King e5. It's important not to play, for example, king b6, h4. He's definitely not in the square. So yeah, there's not much else to be said about this. b5, king e5, b6, king d6. Yeah, it's just a straightforward promotion, making sure that you don't get a blockade. If h4 now, not b7 because of king c7. So you have to secure the path to promotion first. So after h4, king a6, h3, and now b7, threatening to promote check. So not h2 because of promotion with check. So instead king c7, but then now king a7 and we promote with check anyway. And this is a famous pawn composition by the composer Duras, and it was made in 1905. And it's one of my favorite ones because you have to know how to calculate well. And we're going to move our king out the way by playing king c5. And after king c5, now we're threatening to promote. And he's also threatening to promote. So we can't just push our pawn because after g5, g5, b4, you'll see that he ends up queening with check when our pawn gets on b7, and that's not good. So after g5, we're going to go for this pawn. after b4, because now he's not going to be in the square, the black king. So for example, king g6, and now we play b5, g4, and king d4, and the black king is totally lost. There's no way for it to catch our pawn, and we promote. So g4, king d4. So he'll play king g5, because since he cannot catch up to our pawn, he's going to try to promote his. Also, he's creating a dual threat, like we've seen in the pawn races video, where by playing king g5, he's going to get in the square of the pawn. So we can't allow this to happen. We have to play b5. And we're 3 moves away from promotion. He could play g3 now, but that wouldn't be a good idea because of king e3. And then king h4, c6, king h3, g7, g2, king f2, king h2, queens, g1. Uh-oh, he's in check. He can't do that. So that's why that doesn't work playing g3. Instead, he'll play king h4. But it's almost the same thing. b6, king h3, b7, and we're going to queen first. Anyways, so the last try is king f4, but now we're definitely going to queen with check. He's on the queening diagonal. g3, b7, g2, and then we queen with check. The last thing he could try instead of g5 is he could try to catch up to our pawn. But like we saw in the previous example, we just played b4, king f7, b5, king e8, and not b6 now because of king d8, followed by king c8 and king b8 for blockading our pawn. So we have to prevent that. By playing king c6, he's still trying to do the blockade by playing king d8. But now we play king b7. And simple calculation shows that since it takes 5 moves to promote, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So g4, we have 4 moves, but at the very end, we'll queen with check, so it gives us an extra move. King a8, g4, king b6, g3, king b7, g5, king a8, g4, b6, g3, b7, g2, and now we queen with check. So again, after g5, our king has to move, and then 3 pawn moves. He can promote in 4. So as long as we promote with check, that is our 4th move. He won't be able to promote on his 4th move. He has to move the king. So we get there on time. And now here we have a similar example. And this composition is by Grigoriev, and it was made in 1936. And it's similar to the king is a sword video, where we saw a similar type of situation. First, we cannot promote our a pawn because he promotes his e pawn. So we have to stop that e pawn from promoting by playing king d4. But he's going to try to, make our sword unwieldy. And by playing c5, he distracts the king. So after king takes c5, he can now play e5. But the problem with that is that we catch the pawn. And after king e3, then king takes e5, king d3, king d5, king c3, king c5, and it looks like he's going to catch the pawn by playing king b2, but like we saw in the very first video, rule of the square, he won't be able to catch up. And that's the pawn's jubilant behavior when it hasn't moved at all. So e5 doesn't work here. He's going to try to play king to f3, but now we queen with check. A4, e5, a5, e4, a6, e3, a7. He's in the queening diagonal, so it's not going to work. e2, and then we queen with check. So e5 clearly doesn't work at all. But he could try to play king g3, and that gets closer to king f4 without the queening with check problem. For example, a4, and now e5, king a5, because if king d5, king f4, and then the pawns will look to queen at the same time. So in this position, let's see if we can even queen by luring the king into the square. So a5, e4, king d4, e3, a6. Oh, that doesn't work because of king e2, so not a6. Let's see. So instead of so a5, e4, king d4, e3, king d3, king f3, a6, e2, a7. Oh, so he queens first, so that's not good. So that's not gonna work. We can't just play a5 right away. But a cool trick that we have here is that after king f4, we could try playing king c4, but I'm not sure that's a good idea either. So we can't play king d5 here. So after e5, we're actually just going to go ahead and promote a5, e4. Now we have to catch the pawn, king d4. And now he can't play king f3 because of the queening with check problem. He has to play king f4. a6, e3, and now king d3. We lure the king to a bad square. So king f3, a7, e2, and we queen with check. And that's what happens. So that's what happens when he plays king pawn to c5, you know, distracting our king from this square e5. But let's say he tries to support the pawn by playing king f3. Well, as we've seen before, we're going to be able to queen. Now this pawn's in the way, but let's calculate. After a4, king to f4, a5, e5, and now this is interesting. a4, king f4, a5, e5. Like we've seen in the pawn is a sword, the king is a sword video. We don't want to make the king unwieldy. By staying on this, by staying on the d file, he'll be able to queen move a pawn with check. And like we've seen, we don't want that to happen because that's a waste of time. We give him more time, and that's not good. We move out of the way by playing king c3. And now, after e4, a6, e3, a7, e2, king d2, king f3, and now we queen. So that's a very, very cool idea. You move out the way with the intention that he can't push his pawn with check and attack you. Let's see what else. Maybe I missed a variation. So I don't think I missed a variation here. Or actually I did. So after king d4, c5, or actually no, after e5. Now king takes e5, he has king e3. And again, this creates a dual threat. He's getting closer to the square of the pawn. So after, you know, he will be able to push his king closer to the square of the pawn, but he can't do that. So instead, he'll play c5, and then a4, a5, c4, a6, c3, a7, c2, and now queens, so they both queen at the same time, so it's not a good line. So you can't just simply push your pawn, but instead of doing that, after king e3, you can play king d5, threatening to capture this pawn. And now he has to catch up to this pawn because this pawn's lost. So after king d4, then a4, and then it looks like the pawns are going to queen at the same time. So that's not good either. We have to lure the king into a bad square. So after king d6, king d4, taking the pawn doesn't work either because of king takes c6, king c4, and then our pawn is lost. So let me check for a minute. After king e3, a4, c5. We can actually just play king d5, and he will never catch the pawn. So he can't just play c5 already. He plays king d3, securing the promotion square. But now we're able to queen first. a5, c4, ac5, a6, c4, a7, c3, a8, c2. And like we've talked about before, this is a drawn position if the king is far away. Now the king is close, so he can actually just deliver checks and move in on this pawn. So he has a chance. And we're going to start by moving the queen to d5. And now the king has only a few squares to move. He can move to c3, e3, or e2. King to e3 is the easy one, because when you check the king on a dark square with the queen, he has to move to a light square. Always, because the queen controls the dark squares like that, and some light squares too. But not those. So he can only move to king b3. So after king b3, queen a1, and there's no way for him to get control of that square. So so he can't move to c3, king c3, and that leaves king e3 and king to e2. Now let's see, because my computer just totally froze. So we can actually just visualize. So after c2, queen to d4, and now after king to, well, you can't, yeah, king to e3. There it is. So you can play king to e3, but now we can simply just play queen to g2. He cannot promote because of queen to g5 skewering. So what he has to do now is he has to play king to d3, protecting the pawn, but now queen g5 anyway. So what happens is king to e3 doesn't work. Now he has to play king to e2, and now we can play queen to a2. And here's an instructive position. If king to d1, then we can play king to d4, allowing him to promote. But after c1 queens, king to d3, and this queen has nowhere to go. It can't check the king, and we're threatening queen to e2 checkmate. So this is a totally lost position where both sides queen, but one side wins, and I'll give a video about that later. So that doesn't work at all. If king to d2, then king to d4, and he loses again. And king to d1 is his only choice, but again, this transposes to the same position, except it's our move now, so we can just checkmate him right away. So that's what happens. Those are some positions to know about, and I'll give a video about that when both sides queen but one side wins. Here is our last position, where we're threatening to promote on a8, and now we have to play a5, king c5, a4, and this barrier prevents the king from getting any closer to the pawns. He has to take the long way. King d6, king c7, king b7, king a6. So king d6, king d8, preventing that path. He opens up a path now by playing c5, and now he can play king c6, king b7, king a6. And we can't just play king c8 because of king c6, a6, and then king to b6. So the only move, of course, is king to pawn to a6, and now king c6, a5, and this creates another barrier. So it's his move. So c4, king to c8, a3, a7, c2, and now we queen check, and the game is over. So that's it for when both sides queen. When one side queens with check, it's basically winning because you get the free tempo. So if you like this video, give it a like, and feel free to donate. The donation link is in the description. Next video will be on preventing the pawn from queening with check, and then both sides queen but one side wins like we saw earlier. Thanks for watching.